Foul is Fair, Chapter 15, The Unfordable River. The girls looked over the roiling water. Well, Kasha, can you possibly jump it in that thing if you got enough of a start? Kasha surveyed the river. Nope, she said at last. Meanwhile, the leopard on the left was intently focused ahead, muscles tensing under his fur. Maxwell really wants to try, though, Kasha added. For a while, they all sat in the near-tangible moonlight, which suffused the night air the way the golden haze had the day. The girls munched on the granola bars and sandwiches that Lanny had packed for reasons of Lanny. Megan was starving. Of course, she'd been constantly hungry ever since the orange pills hadn't been orange pills anymore. Of course, for this trip, she hadn't even brought the multicolored ones. After this makeshift supper, Lanny sighed. Okay, blankets out. Everyone needs to get sleep. What? Megan asked. You think the situation will get better if we sleep on it? Sort of, said Lanny. Not in the biological equivalent of tech support way. At the raised eyebrows, Lanny sighed again at having to explain her joke. The have you tried turning it off and then on again way. Anyway, never mind. I just need everybody to sleep, and then I'll handle it. But you have to be asleep. What, are you Santa Claus now? Wrong kind of jolly old elf. Or elf-like thing. Look, there are restrictions, okay? What I need to do is a nighttime thing. A non-menehune or sleeping thing. It was Megan's turn to sigh. Fine. Just watch out for owls. Just go to sleep. They made a makeshift camp. Once Kasha agreed her chariot wouldn't be too harmed by a little industrial use. So Megan curled up in the blankets and lay back. The stars burned bright high above, with an intensity and a feeling of nearness Megan never remembered stars possessing before. She'd heard in freshman science class that the hotter stars burned, the more fuel they were using up. Recalling that, she'd swear half the stars in the sky could disappear at any moment. She closed her eyes, trying to ignore the sounds of moving wheels and sliding objects, which became strangely fast as she drifted. Megan dreamed of the castle hallways. One of the people she'd seen about the prescriptions her mother wanted had told Megan that dreams weren't accessible to all five senses. The scent of some kind of barbecue wafted through the halls nevertheless. Megan followed her nose, ravenous, around twist after twist and turn after turn in the bizarre complex of ornate carpets, stained wood, and bare stone. She waved to a passing, bloodthirsty vine. When she came upon the dining hall, the smell was coming from a sea of nightmare faces crowded around a long table, leaving only one chair empty. The huge bird dressed in the middle as the main course was not a roasted, seasoned chicken or turkey or even something like a duck or goose. It had 3 heads. Megan stood in the doorway staring at this for a while, but she was still hungry. A large figure with rough hands the size of her head passed her a fork. She took the empty seat. As bones, both those on the plates and those within the arms of some shoving, elbowing diners, cracked open across the table, Megan had her meal. When she woke, all she could think was that it was delicious. She wasn't thinking about whether she was supposed to get up in the not-quite light of not-quite dawn. Megan! Lanny shouted, suddenly grabbing into the riverbank. Megan looked around. A collection of small trees had been uprooted. Their stumps stood on the riverbank, sliced into angled wedges of varying heights, a different rope tied around each. Across the river, the higher ropes provided handholds, as the lower ones were bound together with logs for stepping. The logs started off extremely close, but eventually became sparser. On the opposite side of the riverbank, the sets of ropes were held down by, or attached to, several large rocks. Not done. Right, sorry, I'll go back to sleep. Nope, doesn't work, Lanny said, pulling herself up. You made it count as morning, this job is over. Sorry. Oh well, we'll just be really, really careful for the last bit. Megan looked over as the others were getting up and looked at the chariot. Oh, yeah. Kasia stepped over and kicked one of the wedge stumps, finding that it had, apparently, taken root again. She gauged the level of the slant and the combined area of the wood. She and Lanny exchanged grins for a moment. Then the satirist looked back. What do you think, boys? The leopard in the aviator helmet sniffed hesitantly. His brother simply stood himself near the chariot, muscles tensing again. Kasia hitched her cats up and took the chariot far back to where the trees had previously been. After a few moments, Jude and Maxwell started running. In sophomore biology, Megan had learned that the peregrine falcon is the fastest living animal. For a moment, watching the big cats build up speed, it was harder to believe. As they ran up the rickety but rooted ramp, the leopards roared like, well, a motorcycle engine. Above that was simply a high-pitched, yee-haw! Both girls let out a breath Megan didn't know they were holding when the wheels of the chariot hit the opposite bank by the slightest margin. Various bits of grass and chips of bark kicked up into the water by the jump attracted the attention of strange, large fish with noticeable teeth. Well, our turn now, Lonnie said. She looked at the water. A bit, slower and more careful. Yeah, said Megan. They tentatively edged their way across the bridge, clutching the ropes more and more as they progressed and had to take wider steps onto fewer logs. As they drew closer to the somewhat less elaborate moorings on the other side, the ropes drastically angled lower, which meant having to crouch lower to hold on, making it even harder to avoid looking closely at the fish things that snapped just below the logs. It also made the increasingly bigger steps more awkward. Ugh, I should have worn gloves, Megan said, as her hand and arm were brush-burned by rope mid-lunge. You should have stayed the heck asleep, Lonnie muttered. Eventually, they managed to toss themselves on the riverbank, breathing heavily for a moment, while Kasia, Aisling, Jude, and the Count all stared at them. Maxwell was busy staring at the snapping fish things, though Kasia said, Maxwell? No, without even looking at him. Kasia then took some of the scattered logs Lanny's frantic Menehune activity had left on that side of the river and started to bind them together with rope from the chariot's pack. Lonnie occasionally glanced over as she was drawing herself up, twitched slightly, and muttered under her breath about workmanship and restrictions. No rules for me, kiddo, Kasia said cheerfully as she propped the improvised ramp against the stones. There, that'll be something for the way back. Is this really the time to be planning the way back? Megan asked. You think we'll have time to do it when we've just stolen a magic sword?